person watching. That's great. 3. Ooh. Hello. Okay, so we've got 5. I think this section, wrong account though. That's fine. Let me check my roster to see how many people are in this class, so I know when I'm good to get going. Okay, so 9. All right. So I'll give folks a minute or two to come on in. Let me get my screen all set up again. Okay, 8, 7. All right. So hi everybody, welcome to Game Prototyping Spring 2021. I'm really excited to be working with you all. I really enjoy teaching game prototyping. It's a fun class. So I hope you have as much fun as I'm going to have teaching it. So what is this class? It's a probably different class from what you are used to taking. Usually today is the day where we do like the syllabus thing, and I'm going to do that, but I'm going to try to also talk about this game production methods and realities. So let's see. I was able to do it for my section of this yesterday. So let's see if I can continue my winning streak here and have be able to get all my stuff covered today. So if you've had me in the past, if you've not had me in the past, hi, I'm Chris. I actually can bring up the PowerPoint to do a little intro to myself real quick. Who am I, and why am I qualified to tell you about this stuff? So I'm an assistant professor here at Kent. I'm in the animation game design program now that we are finally a bachelor's degree of our own, which is super exciting. You can call me Chris. That's totally fine. I am what's called a tenure track professor, meaning that I am, from an employment standpoint, that means that like I, have to submit stuff related to research and teaching and being on committees and stuff like that, and talk about it every year for a few years, and then they, hopefully I earn what's called tenure. What that means for you and why I talk about it is that, it goes into like who I am. So what I do is I'm not, I don't only teach at the university. I also make games, and tenure track professors were responsible for about 60% of our job is teaching. 30% is what is research. So in my case, creative output, writing about game design, making animations, things like that. And then the rest is, like I said, service to the university, the other 10%. So that making stuff, I have been a game maker since about 2006. I would say I've been like in the industry for about 11 years. I've written books about game and level design, including An Architectural Approach to Level Design, which is a really well received book on level design that's used by a bunch of schools and studios and things like that. I've talked at GDC, done a bunch of other stuff. I've made games over 20, and I could probably increase that number a little bit, since 2006, which has included commercial games, mobile, indie, tabletop, but has also included what are called serious or educational games, so games about solving problems in the real world, and then like weird experimental stuff. So I've done a bunch of different things in the industry, and that's what I try to bring to this class. So what this class is about is, sorry, I gotta crack my back here. Oh, there we go. What this class is about is it's not, you might be used to a lot of software training classes. Like, okay, this is the class where we're going to do Unreal, and this is the class where we're going to do Unity, and this is the class where we're going to do Maya. That's not what this class is. This is a class that is for you to learn the principles of game design. And the principles of game design are not technological ones. You use technology to make games, but you don't have to. The idea of game design, one of the I think the great myths, the big lie of game design school or the game industry sometimes is that you have to learn all this complicated software and take classes to learn all this complicated stuff, and then you have to go like begging for work from big studios and try to jump over the hoops that they put in front of you in order to actually engage in this industry. And that's really not true. Game making has democratized in the last 15 years, 15, 16, 20, I don't know, years or so, to the point where it's not really like this mystery, and game makers not these people that nobody seems to know. We have tools like Unity and Unreal that we use in the program, but also tools like GB Studio or Game Maker or Construct 2 or Twine or Pico 8. All of these things that you may or may not have heard of, that people are just making small games or games as individuals or small teams that are expressive, that are interesting, interesting, fun games to play online, all the way up to stuff that sits in the number one top of Steam for a while. I'm thinking of games like Undertale. That's made in Game Maker. So the idea that you can't make a game is not what this class is about. This class is about making games, making lots of games. There's a quote by a great game designer that says, your first 100 games are going to suck, so get them out of the way fast. Well, we're going to make 3 in the course of this course, but hey, that's 3 more than you might have had otherwise. So we're going to make small games. But the other cool thing about this is that even if you're not interested in making small games or being independent, an independent game designer or things like that, what you can do with this, and this bears out even in big studios, is you will learn techniques that will allow you, even if you are working at a big studio, to prototype. That's where the course title comes from. To prototype your game idea right away, quickly, without having to fight with, making 3D models, doing environment artwork, fighting with like Unity being kind of finicky or Unreal, filling up what little hard drive space you have left because for some reason, even just like opening a project is 600 megabytes in it. you don't have to deal with that. You can just kind of like do something quick and easy, and see if like have some abstract version of your game idea that you can test with a person and then see, is my game idea actually good, or does it need refinement, or does it need to be scrapped because it was a bad idea and we should never talk about it again. That's what prototyping is for. So this is really we are getting into game design at its most elemental core parts in this course, and so I'm excited that I'm excited for what comes out of it. So I'm not going to read the front page of the syllabus. It's fairly cut and dry, but I said like you're going to make 3 games that highlight different aspects of game making. And so I'm always asked like, well, do we need to buy the textbook? And if you've had me before, you know that I don't really like to hold quizzes on the textbook. That's not how I teach. If I were teaching like a game history class, I might do a history quiz, because that, memorization is a little more helpful there. But for something like this, I really want you to learn by doing. That being said, the reason you have 2 textbooks in this course, and they're really great textbooks, one of them is Game Design Workshop, 4th edition by Tracy Fullerton, and the other is Game Design Vocabulary by Anna Anthropy and Naomi Clark. And those books, Game Design Workshop is one of the best books on game design ever written. It's a classic of the field. That's why it's in a 4th edition by now. So you should buy it. You should not sell it back at the end of the semester. You should keep it. This is my personal recommendation to you for your professional long-term bookshelves. But it's a book about prototyping games and a play and prototyping centered design process, which is what we're going to engage in this class. So they talk about everything from principles of game design to how to prototype even games that you think of as belonging to like the 3D realm, not 3D Realms, the company, but belonging to, in 3D, like prototyping even them down at like tabletop level. So making like a tabletop adaptation of a first person shooter. How do you do that so you can test your shooter before going and like messing around in Unreal or something. So it's an incredible book. And the other one is Game Design Vocabulary, also incredible book, also much recommended. I love it, and the reason I love it is because it takes very complex topics that are maybe talked about in more detail in other books, but that are it gives you a really straightforward exploration of them, and does so with the developers who created that book are the type that are making games of the kind that we're going to make in this class, but that's like their whole career. That's their whole practice. And it's really cool that it's like that, because it shows you what great insight can come from making like really quick, small games. And the idea, of course, is if you make a bunch of really quick, small games, eventually what becomes a quick, small game to you will actually grow and grow and grow and grow. What was a quick, small game for me, when I first started out, or what seemed like a great effort, is very simple. And as a quick, small game, I'm now like, the current side game project I have going on is like a Zelda-like Game Boy game, right? Because it's just like, oh, well, I can kind of quickly make a few rooms and make a few levels, and hey, it's pretty fun, in my spare time. So, the scope of what will become small is going to expand to you. So we also, I've said this before, I'll say it again, this is not a software course. You're not going to come in and then I'm going to give you like, oh, your homework today is to make me a 3D model and, use this many polygons and use these tools to, make a character model or something like that. That's not what this class is. The problems in this class are going to be very abstract. They are going to be very they might look like things you've not necessarily had in classes before to be challenged to do. I'm going to ask you to do some things that are like design questions, but enacted through technology. So in that way, there is software that you're going to use. And I'm going to provide, pre-recorded tutorial videos for them. I'm actually going to record one probably after this class. I've been prepping it all day for the first piece of software we're going to use called Twine. But this is not a class where like the content of the class is learning Twine. The content of the class is learning game design, which I should mention. If you think game design is using software, you're dead wrong. If you think design is just use of software, you're dead wrong. Design is like the creation, the making of something that addresses some design issue or problem. For an architect, it's like, well, make a building on this site, but this site has like this slope and wind hits it a certain way. So you need to like design around that and come up with a building that will, be beautiful and sit nicely on the site and not get blown over by the wind or something, by wind loads and things like that. For a graphic designer, it's, you need to make a flyer for a concert that, the band it's like a heavy metal band. So you've got to, take that into it. But we are, I don't know, the group's audience expects this, that, and the other things, but it's also got to be like legible, right? So, graphic designer is going to make the poster under certain conditions, and that's how they're going to, work. They have to solve those problems. It's not like, you're a graphic designer just merely because you can use Photoshop. It's that you're a graphic designer because you understand how, to use typefaces and colors and layout to produce something legible and beautiful and interesting and that fits your client's needs. For game design, we are trying to create something. I don't want to use the word fun. Fun is a very difficult word because it's overused to the point where it almost doesn't mean anything. But you're trying to create something that is memorable, meaningful, and evokes the kind of emotion that you intend for a person to have while they're playing. So if you're making Doom or Halo, you want to give the player the feeling of being an awesome super soldier fighting aliens or demons or whatever. If you're making a horror game, you want the opposite. You want to feel like your protagonist is very weak against this like oppressive environment or creature that exists in the environment, but you don't know where they are, and that's why it's scary. If you want to make a Zen game, you want to make a game that's relaxing and challenging, but not so challenging that it's frustrating. You want it to be like a nice sunny day of a game. And of course the problems come in where it's like, well, what are the limitations of the platform you're launching it on, or the software you're using, or how big is your team? If you're a team of one, you're probably not going to make a 50-hour 3D Japanese style role-playing game, and that's okay. You can make small games. So that's what we mean by design. It's problem solving. It's not like, I've talked with people that are like, I know I learned Unreal, so I guess I'm a level designer. No, you're not a level designer. The software of level design, but you're not engaged with like the thinking of that. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to engage with this thinking. So the software you're going to use to enact some of these processes, though, are, so there's Twine. That's the first one. Usually the first project for this class is a tabletop, given the situation in the outside world right now. We are, I didn't think that there was a great way for us to do team tabletop making in the way that we usually could do. So we're going to try a new thing this semester, which is the first project. You're going to use Twine, and you're going to reverse engineer a favorite game level to see how you might, prototype the decision making of playing through a game level in a like sort of flow chart style in this choose your own adventure software that's very popular. It was actually the software that was used to, if you remember the Black Mirror movie, choose your own adventure movie thing, Bandersnatch. It was used to plan Bandersnatch. Second project, what we're going to do, so for the second project, you're going to use a game engine called GB Studio. That's Game Boy Studio. And it's a piece of software that it's lends itself, it has several genres now that are, how do I explain it? It's of the kind of software, like, so you're used to, and if anybody's sweating, like I'm saying, oh no, you have to learn all these new engines. You might be used to engines like, again, Unity or Unreal that take a class to learn and are very big and are very complex. I mention this because I've described this class to students, and then I see they start to go into a cold sweat because they're like, oh my God, I have to learn more game engines. No. Well, yes, you do, but these are not those engines. These are not engines that you could spend an entire class learning. It's like Twine, and you'll see in the video, it's like half an hour to an hour of tinkering around. You kind of got it, right? It's a basically it's a set of web pages with hyperlinks to each other in HTML, and it's super simple. GB Studio is very similar. It's of the kind of game engine that is no coding required, sort of like the Construct 2s and the game makers of the world, where it's no coding required, but on the no coding required part of the engine, it has a bunch of pre-made game mechanic chunks. And you sort of arrange those chunks in such a way that, boop, a game comes out. So for GB Studio, it was created to, like, the first iterations of it were really for making light RPG type adventures. Not so much like battle systems, though I've seen people build them. Those are bigger projects, though. What you can do, like, really right away out of the box, super simply, is create, I would say, the equivalent of like a town in Pokemon. Or, like any old school role-playing game, 8-bit role-playing game type thing. So like you can walk around, you can talk to non-player characters, and they can, give you items, and giving, from that you can like do quests and, pause the game, and then the quest screen appears and you get like a check when you've found the lady's cat, congratulations. Kind of thing. So that's what the project 2 is going to be. You're going to use that engine, and you're going to create a short but like narrative packed little mini fetch questy RPG type game, and that's going to teach you about storytelling. And then the third project, we are going to use Game Maker Studio 2, but we are going to use Game Maker in its so Game Maker has two sides. I already mentioned that there's a no coding required side. There's also a side with a scripting language. And why I'm teaching you Game Maker is that, the other, and there's a lot of game engines out there. And some of them are like, you could launch a retail game in this. Some of them are a little more niche. Game Maker hits this nice, it straddles that line really well, because you can start out, it can be your first engine with the no coding required part, but then if you learn the language of it, GML, and again, I've already actually made that video where I do like a simple shoot 'em up in GML. If you do those videos, then and you learn some of that language, and you apply it to different game genres, you can make a retail game. The games Undertale, I mentioned Undertale earlier, Hyper Light Drifter, some older indie games like Nidhogg, and probably some ones since that I didn't realize are in Game Maker were made in Game Maker. But it's a fully featured retail engine. Sorry, I'm gonna blow my nose. And so you're gonna make a game in Project 3, and the game you're going to make is a retro game. I'm going to randomly assign old video game consoles to each group, and in that group you are going to learn all about the game console. You're going to learn what its resolution was. You're going to learn what colors it was capable of showing, and you are going to make a game in Game Maker that resembles. You're not going to make it according to the launch, be able to launch in the original hardware, but you will make it according to the visual aspects of that engine. So it's actually really like a history and art direction project. So that's what Project 3 is all about. Again, we're not doing tabletop, but I thought on the syllabus that I would at least include a link to the tabletop website that I like, if you're interested in learning more about tabletop, because a lot of the lectures are very similar. So I'm still gonna mention game design inclusive of tabletop design. And if you want to try your hand in it, I thought I'd share, keep the resource around. So that's the basics of the course. I'll talk about the schedule in a bit, but before doing so, I'd like to hear what you think. So please ask me 2 questions about the course, and I'm happy to answer them. I'm going to blow my nose again. Let me check Discord. Okay, 2 questions, then I will move on. All right. Throughout the semester, will any of the groups change, or are we in the same group the whole semester? That is a fantastic question. Person who asked the question. By the way, because we're on a YouTube stream and the idea is that this is archived, I'm not going to use names. Or I'm going to try very hard not to use names. So I see your name and I acknowledge your contribution. I just wanted to let you know what was up with me just being person. You are going to... So groups are randomly assigned. As you saw, I already randomly assigned the groups and sent out that spreadsheet via the class announcement. And if you haven't seen it, check your emails or go look at Blackboard and look for the announcements part. And it has a link to a PDF of all the groups. I will randomly reassign groups every project, and group sizes will change per project as well to match the scope of the project. So Twine's pretty simple, kind of small. You can do it with 2 people. In previous years, Twine was actually project 2, but I asked more of project 2. So it was a little bigger scope. This is smaller scope. So 2 people. There's one group with 3 people. For that, I usually just say well, make sure there are more pictures, or maybe there's more variables running your gameplay. So it's it's more fleshed out so that 3 people each have something to do. So really, make your game, group with 3 people, make your game a little more complicated. Find a way to make your game a little more complex. So the second project, which is the GB Studio game, that's going to be 3 or 4 per team. For that, you're looking at a little more complex game. It has artwork, it has coding, it has sound, things like that. And then the retro game, because it's a little more specific coding, a little more specialized coding, and it's a little higher production, that's like 4 or 5 people. So that's usually how the group sizes go. So somebody says, one of you said, I was talking with my friend about another software that seemed interesting to mess around with, just came out recently. If we saw fit, would we be able to use that in place of the software? Can you please be more specific of which project and which software for that? And then while you're typing your answer to the thing I just asked, I will talk about the next question, which is, for the level in Twine, are there genres of games we should avoid using levels from? So this came up in the class yesterday, and you might have seen me talk about it a bit on Discord. And you'll see that I'm going to try to do the example project or for the tutorial like in a way that will make you feel like it's doing several different types of genres. What I said was, don't just quickly rely. So Twine is like out of the box. The easiest like thing to imagine yourself making in it is like a choose your own adventure game, right? And you can do a lot with that, but I don't want everything to be like, you're in a cave. Do you walk north, south, east, or west? And like, those are great. Don't get me wrong. I love those games. But if everybody just makes like dungeon crawlery things, then, you will have done the thing. But the thing I want to challenge you to do a little bit is think about, because if we are thinking of this as a flowchart, and if you're unfamiliar with a flowchart, it's like a way to map decision making, and it's a really useful visualization tool for starting software, for building software. So like, think about like starting a piece of software, and it's like, do you choose new project or open? And then you might have like, okay, if it's open, you could take this path, and it's new project, you take that path, and it's like a bunch of questions that you have a big, that you can chart out the person's like walkthrough of the software. And that's a useful thing for designing software. Twine works kind of like that. And what I want you to think about when you're making it, I realize this is a longer answer to your question, but think about it this way. When you're sitting and playing a video game, and you're playing one of the examples I'm going to use in the Twine is from Halo. It's not going to literally be like you are Master Chief and there's a grunt in front of you, but it's like I'm kind of modeling a level from one of the Halo games in a little bit, just without the copyright infringing stuff. So it's like, you're behind a rock and you see like a grunt, an elite, and I can't remember what the sniper ones are called, but the annoying guys with the shield and like the rifle. And I say like, okay, you see one enemy and he's kind of like a low level little enemy with like a pea shooter. Jackals, thank you. And then like an elite, and then, a bigger guy, and then that the little guy is listening to, and then you see who looks like a sniper, like who do you shoot first? And then, and you have like, 5 ammo or something like that. You can go through this, like, you can make little guy, big guy, sniper links, and then, like if you click on sniper first, then like maybe it goes to one where it's like you take him out and the others don't seem to notice. So like, who do you shoot next? And then it turns into this, like, you can start to map these decisions of like, well, what if you shot the little guy first? Then he's down and like everybody's, at least one's down, but everybody's alerted. If you shot the big guy first, he doesn't go down, but he's on alert, and you also have a sniper to do. You can start to flowchart out all these decisions, and then you've like created a fight scene, right? Even if you're so, and that can get very complex very quickly, but that's how you would like map out the process of being in a, like a Halo level where, when you arrive at one of those like encounters with a group of Covenant soldiers, right? So you can do a lot with this in terms of decision making. In terms of what to avoid, again, don't avoid anything, but also don't be afraid to stretch yourself. Try making a little action scene, or try making like, you're standing in this grassy area and the clouds all look like the bushes and you see a little thing walking towards you. You also see a thing in the air with a question block on it. Do you hit the question block or you jump on the thing standing in front of you? You can do that too. So, try different genres out. And again, that's why work with your partner in the group to kind of ping pong those ideas off. Okay, looking at the software in question, it seems it will only be applicable to a game maker project. I think. Sure. So the follow up on the generally my policy on can I use this software instead of that software is to say yes. To be honest, I very rarely will be like, no, don't do it. I won't say no. I will try to steer you away from bad ideas. And then if you choose to listen or not, I had a group once where I was kind of I totally I didn't enforce the software choice, and they decided to do the retro game project in Unreal. And the console they chose was Atari, and you cannot make an Atari look-alike game in Unreal. It won't let you. Unreal's not suited for 2D at all. They were going to try to make a 2D part of their engine, and they just kind of abandoned it. So it couldn't really become a 2D game, and they couldn't really make it, even like look like Atari. Plus it was, we checked the project, even trying to make a little game like that, was so big that, in terms of file size, because it's an Unreal project, that we looked it up. If you were to download all of the ROMs of the complete Atari library, it would be less space than the Unreal project for the faux Atari game. So, I'm going to steer you away if it's bad, if it's like a bad idea. Again, they passed the class. They did fine. They just were like, this game could have turned out better had we made a different tech choice. But, like, that's not to say they didn't make a fine game. But yeah, my general thing with different software is like to agree, but just to be like, well, it might not work. And here's why, but if you want to go for it, go for it. I've had, for example, for the narrative one where we did use Twine in previous years, they've used RenPy instead, and it was great. I was gonna look at it anyway. Yeah, just let me know what's the software. I might even know it. I would love to hear about it, because maybe you might introduce me to a thing that might actually I use in future years. I'm going to address some of these other questions. So person that asked about what genres should we avoid, don't avoid any, but don't also lean on dungeon crawly RPG adventure game too much, because that's try to make an action scene and some other stuff just so you can I want you to see how games can be abstracted down, boiled down, really, is what it is. And you'll see in the examples, there's one called The Uncle Who Works for Nintendo, which is if you can mental map out this Twine, where it's you'll always return to the living room of this house, and then you'll always have the option to go to the kitchen, the bathroom, or to think about something or to ask a question or to look at the clock, it's laid out spatially and you're like, oh man, this is like a level. This is like a Resident Evil game. So I have the 3rd edition of Game Design Workshop. Yeah, that's fine. You know, it's a book that just gets updated every so often with new content. But yeah, 3rd edition is fine. I actually just had like the 2nd edition forever until I got the 4th edition for this class. So, you know, it's not like there's some missing chapter. Oh, the game is great. Are you talking about Uncle that works at Nintendo? I agree. I love that game. I always ask, like, hey, people who are more into interactive narrative than I am, what new twines should I know about? Or what twines should I show my students? And everybody always says that. And I'm like, oh, good. Still relevant. Yes. Is there a length requirement? I'm assuming you're talking about the twine game. I think so. I'm going to show the project brief here in a second, but I believe it says like 5 minutes of gameplay or something like that, which sounds like not a lot. Like 5 minutes of gameplay, depending on the game, can actually be a lot. It can be a lot of software. RPG Paper Maker. Interesting. I knew about RPG Maker, but RPG Paper Maker. Interesting. It's making... Oh, cool. Oh, I've seen this. It depends on... So for those who don't know, I'm going to put this into the chat on YouTube. So go to that link. That's the software he's asking about. It's going to depend largely on which software you get, or which thing you get, because so to me it's like if you get a Super Nintendo or a Game Boy Advance, you can probably make this work because that is going to create a type of game that would fit on that, but nothing's going to stop you from making other types of games. I just think that, like, you know, part of the challenge for that project is that you have to like make a game genre that will be suitable, that what you would have seen on that console. So if you get like the ZX Spectrum, which is a British microcomputer from the 1980s, and that's why I pronounce it ZX instead of ZX, because it's British. So you know, there were not RPGs like this on it. I mean, you could probably find one, but not this sort of like Game Boy Advance, Final Fantasy, Pokemon style. So that would be a situation where like it probably wouldn't work for that project. Now, if you could like break it out into other genres, you can probably make it work. But yeah, so think about it for like what you want to do is like, and this is true for any game making project. Creativity first, tool second, because the point is not the tool. Like the point of this project is not going to be Game Maker. You learn Game Maker as like a benefit, but the point is that you learn art direction and history. So again, like with the Unreal thing, people jumped into Unreal because they're like, oh, I know Unreal. But Unreal was wrong. It was a bad choice it wasn't conducive to the project. So it's like Game Maker will hit most of your marks, but it's like you want to not make any tech choices until you know what you want to do creatively. And to go to the like choosing software question, really explore it more. That's why I'm really open about like saying, yeah, sure, go for it if somebody has another choice, for the software. Because what I have here, again, this isn't the curriculum. These are my recommendations, but you can choose other stuff. Yeah. So says, I knew it would be dependent on what you get, but again, I figured you would ask. No, it's fantastic. Thank you for looking. That's actually super exciting. And I should keep this in mind because it does look pretty rad. And I was looking at like preview videos of this on Twitter, and I was like, what? So yeah, I'm kind of into this. It looks really cool. So yeah. And then I see, how crazy can we go with the story all the way? In fact, I just mentioned the ZX Spectrum for the third project, and the reason that I never... So, like, I cycle all the consoles out, so there's not always, like, every class gets every console every year, except the Speccy, because the design criteria of the Speccy, there was, like, just something in the air where that was the era of like what they called British surrealism, and it was basically a bunch of British game developers in their bedrooms who grew up with Monty Python, but they all made these really weird games, and because everything was so bananas, trying not to swear on stream, but everything was so bananas, like all these games were funky and weird and wonderful. And a little janky. In fact, there's a term for it now called Eurojank, referring to this era. I never cycle it out. I always put it in. So yes, go all crazy. Safe for work, but all crazy. And that goes for any of them. In Project 2, where you do the GB Studio, the story prompt is a trip to the store. Well, what happens when you go to the store? Is it like, does something scary happen at the store? Is it a very normal thing at the store? Do you see a can of something and it makes you think of a long lost relative and regrets? Do you get abducted by aliens? Why not? Go wild. Same thing with this project. By part and parcel, you're going to be basing it on an existing level, but like that level can be kind of wild. Yeah, basically what you have here, like you can be walking in a city and doing everyday stuff, and then surprise robo demons from Jupiter. Yeah, basically. In fact, to have like different examples of different genres in the Twine tutorial, I actually literally did that. It's like, you solve a puzzle and get inside a rusted old truck, and then you pick up what looks like a toy ray gun, and now you're suddenly Master Chief, and then you can go fight aliens. That's literally what I'm doing right now. So sometimes games are silly, and that's okay. We have 10 minutes left. Okay. So the schedule, I'm going to do the schedule real quick. Again, you can read this. Oh, this is an all online class. Don't you're going to see things in your syllabi that are like, here's the remote learning info, and the university defines tier 1 courses and tier 2 courses, and we're a tier 2 course, and those can come in starting Monday, February 1st. No, not this class. This is all remote. Don't put yourself at risk unnecessarily. Just be safe. So this class is all remote the entire semester. So every week, and these are all on Blackboard, all the assignments are turned into Blackboard assignments, so everything is documented and has the correct amount of points, and has, all the due dates are on, like, specifically down to like what time you turn things in are on Blackboard. Go use Blackboard. So this whole schedule is in the Blackboard modules, so go check those out. That's your like week by week guide. But every week is going to have basically what the topic is. It's going to have the lecture notes. I already posted all the lecture notes. And I'm still, with the next few days, I'm going to try to get back in the habit of posting the lecture videos. Sometimes, like with some of my other research stuff, that can be kind of tough to manage, like all the video management, but I'm gonna give it a good college try. If nothing else, all the videos are going to be archived on my YouTube channel by, like the date they were broadcast. So everything has a topic, and it'll usually say like when stuff is due, when stuff is distributed. So today is the course intro and, project 1 distributed. Every week we'll have a case study. And in normal times, I would like put the game up on the projector on the second day of the week. So in this case, Wednesday, and we'd play a game for like 15, 20 minutes and then talk about it in terms of design. We can't do that right now. So what I've done in every case is on the weekly modules, I put a link to either the game or a long play video of the game. If it's like a retail game that, I'm not going to assume that everybody's going to go buy all these games. I'm not going to do that to you. So, a long play video of a game, and it usually says like, as you play, look for this or think about that. So every week has a case study. In fact, this week's is the uncle that works for Nintendo, because I think it's a great case study to really get you thinking about what's going on in Project 1. And then you have readings. Now, again, we're not quizzing. I'm not going to assume you do all the readings, but these are recommended texts to expand your knowledge about the things we're going to learn about. So, for example, like, the reading from Game Design Workshop, chapters 1 and 6. That's going to give you an idea of like what prototyping is and what stage or what purpose it has in the development process. In one semester, I had a student ask like 3/4 of the way through the semester, hey, how nice does a prototype have to be before we show it to somebody, anybody? And I looked at him and was like, because in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was covered in the first reading the first week in chapter 1. It's like one of the first paragraphs of the book. And like, oh no, I both caught this person not reading and they've been missing this vital knowledge. The answer, of course, is right away, and it's in its quickest, dirtiest, ugliest form. Like, if you're making a tabletop game, get index cards and a Sharpie out and write all the thing, like content of the cards on the Sharpie and play, right? Make a hex grid on paper or like download a hex grid graph paper, print it out, get some army men, cannibalize a Monopoly set, and say to somebody in your household, hey, let's test my first person shooter or something like that, or my RPG or whatever. Quickest, dirtiest, ugliest, programmer artiest version. You want to play it as soon as possible to see if your gameplay ideas are good, and then you can make it pretty later. So so these are all like recommendations. They'll expand your knowledge of game design, and they'll reinforce what's in the class. So we're going to be at sort of like core gameplay concepts until February 8th, which is that week we are going to do Project 1 streams. For that, what we'll likely do is get together either on Discord or on Blackboard, and hey, this rhyme. And you'll stream a member of your group will stream your game project to me or to us all, and we will like watch and talk about it. So Project 2 section, like what's around there is we're going to do a bunch of lectures on narrative and storytelling. So that starts the week of February 15th and goes until the week of March 15th. So you have about a month for that. That's going to be your GB Studio project. And, that's where you're going to be doing, all this story-based study. So, first part of the semester, mechanics, basic gameplay concepts. Second part is storytelling concepts. And then the third part of the semester, we're going to have possible guest speaker the week of March 22nd, but I haven't really lined up anything yet, so I'll let you know how that goes. Starting March 29th, you're really going to dive in. So you're going to have Project 3 distributed March 15th. And you can like theoretically begin work on it, but we're not really going to start lessons about it until March 29th after the guest speaker week or potential guest speaker week. And that one we're going to talk about more of like industry stuff. So like how to work with historical precedents, how art direction works. You're going to learn about pixel art. You're going to have a lecture on level design. And, you know, that has, like, again, I've written books on level design. So, you know, if you want another lecture on level design, I actually have 2 that I've given in this class before. April 12th through 18th is spring break. And then somewhat unique, you know, we're making stuff, and I don't want you to think of any of the projects in this course as just homework. I want you to think of them as, if you're interested in becoming a game maker, this is going to be your opportunity to make lots of games and, you know, you're going to make lots of games, and you're going to like fill out that list of like, here's my history of game making, and get experience as a game designer. And part of that experience, you know, it can seem very hard to learn about how to make the thing, but even harder, and truth be told, like what you actually spend most of your time thinking about when you're a professional is not so much the making. You just kind of like can do that. That's almost the fun part. The rest of the stuff is like starting a business, starting a studio, you know, working with people. How do you let audiences know about your game? How do you advertise? How do you do social media? How do you submit your game to festivals? Why do you submit your game to festivals? Things like that. So the final lecture of the semester is going to be about that. And hopefully, you know, it'll give you some inspiration for things to like submit to. Project 3, the outcome of Project 3 has actually been submitted to festivals 2 years in a row, the last 2 years. Since I started teaching this class here. And it was the students from this class have gotten into festivals with their Project 3 projects every year. So, you know, like, hopefully that continues. And then the finals week, we're going to do like a similar streaming thing. We're going to do like a Discord streaming thing, like, you know, presentation thing for every project. So that's how the schedule is going to work. And then one final thing. So I'm going to do an experimental thing this semester where I'm preparing a Kickstarter right now. And I don't mention it because I'm like, hey, everybody, back my Kickstarter. In fact, I make a point not to distribute links to it to my students because that's icky and you know, not ethical. However, what I do want to do with it is because it's happening during the semester, we are going to observe. I'm going to be open with you about that process as a case study of I am working on a project and I want you to have the benefit of real-time commentary and thought process on seeing what it looks like when a game project is in this stage. So I'm gonna, you know, share, you know, maybe I'll pop it on the screen or something like that when the Kickstarter is active, or, you know, talk about my prep for it or things like that, you know, at relevant times, or like how the social media is going. Simply just to be like, hey, here's a trick I learned. Maybe it will help you in the future. You know, things like, you know, when we post animated GIFs of our game, more people share it than when we post just screenshots, or when we do environment screenshots instead of like just character pictures, so that you can see more of what the game looks like. People tend to post those more. Or, you know, using these hashtags, we've gotten great success. That's kind of where we are right now. So we can do stuff like that. That's it. We didn't get to the PowerPoint, but I'm going to try to merge the two for next week for you guys. But you all really brought it with the questions, so we actually had some really great discussion here. So we're slightly over time, but I guess like if you do have questions, please ask them, and then, you know, I can let you go, and then we can, you know, if you have more questions later, we can. I'm around. But yeah, ask me a question before we head out. The project brief for Project 1, by the way, is on Blackboard. They're all on Blackboard. You can see them all right now. Again, reverse engineer a level from one of your favorite video games into a text adventure, and you're gonna think about like pacing and what the core gameplay is. One or more players. Oh yeah, remember, don't use if you're doing like Super Mario Brothers, don't be like, you are Mario. You know, try to keep the don't actually use the copyrighted stuff in there. That way you can share it. Oh, it does end at 3:30. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Yes. All right. You're right. Thank you. The earlier class I taught it ended at 12:15. So my head is kind of in like, it ends at the 15. Thank you. Okay, yeah, so we do have time to really quickly go through that. But does anybody else have a question before we go through this? Yeah, gameplay must be 5 minutes or so. You may use variables. I'm not making that a hard requirement because this is like a first project, so I'll show you how to make them in the video anyway. They're pretty simple. Again, you can read this. And then I have suggested resources, which in this case, because it's like you're reverse engineering level design, a lot of readings on level design here from the level design. So the exact date of the first project will be posted later. No, it is your class periods during the week of, it's in the syllabus. It's the class periods during the week of February 8th. So, you know, the week of February 8th, those days are February 8th and 10th. So basically what we'll do is like, you know, some of the groups will present. We can probably knock them out in one day in this class, which so yeah, it's going to be February 8th and 10th. And then what I'll usually do is just have it where like I'll say, okay, this group is going at this time and this group is going at that time. And then all the projects like must be submitted to the pages. Oh, I should mention that. The final builds must be submitted by the last day of class that week at midnight. So Thursday at midnight usually. And the reason for that is that, like, you know, if you present it in class and I give you a piece of feedback where it's like, oh man, or we find a bug, you can fix it before you post the final build on the page. So with turning in these projects, what you're going to do for every project is you're going to make a page for that project on a website called itch.io, like itch, like, oh man, I'm itchy. And that is a popular indie game marketplace. So it's something that you should become familiar with if you want to be a game designer. But so when you post a game, you don't have to make it public. You know, you just have to be able to, like, I need to be able to see it, but you don't have to actually like make it public if you don't want to. In fact, I legally can't force you to make it public. But, you know, what we're going to do to make it easier to find the games is I've arranged a game jam for each project. And basically what that's going to do is, like, when you make your project page, you can go to the game jam and, you know, say submit a game, and then you will choose from your list of like pages attached to your account, and then you'll just say that game goes to this game jam. And then what I'll be able to do is look on the like entries, and I'll see all the games from the class. All the documentation is on itch for that, so rely on that. It's not something we're necessarily going to like take up class time learning, but you know, that's how I'm doing it. And if you go on Discord and you see game jam links, that is actually, it's not loading right now, but I did post a thing to that jam there. So let me see how are we? Okay, a few minutes left. Let me cover what I can of this PowerPoint. So again, this class is, the reason I want to cover this today is because it's really kind of like a quick intro to development styles, but really the development style that this class is based around. And what you're going to see in this class is that you're going to have alternating weeks of, especially in the bigger projects, you're going to have alternating weeks of prototype and testing. And there we go. So I'm going to blow through this. What this means is that this is a class based on, and if you read Fullerton, you're going to see a lot of this, but iteration, meaning that you're going to make a little version of, make a quick version of something and test it, and then see what was right and see what was wrong, and then make a quick version and then test it. And you're going to go around this loop until it's like ready to go, and then you can put it out. Since these group projects, does everyone in the group submit on the game jam or only one member in the group? It's one member in the group posts for game projects. So basically just like decide who is going to be the person in your group to make the page and I don't know, be the person in charge of the actual page. Thank you for asking that. That's a great question. So yeah, just have one person be that person. So yeah, you plan, and then what you're going to do is you're going to go through a process of conceptualizing, like, what is it that I need to do, or what do I want to make, or if you've play tested before, what do I need to fix? So that's contextualizing. Then you build it, you implement it. Meaning that it's like, okay, I have this game plan of how I'm going to build this thing. I'm going to make it now. Make. And that's the software part. Then you hand it to, brother, boyfriend, like somebody said, are the testers, but you give it to somebody that's not you. That not you is really important, because here's the thing. It's really hard to be objective about your own game because it's your baby. This is actually a GB Studio game that I'm working on right now, and GB Studio games can go on to actual Game Boys, by the way, or Game Boy emulators. But it's like it's your game. You love it. Nothing's wrong with you, except it is. And when I hand it to my family and they play it, they're like, I ran into a bug here. And here's what happened. And then they can tell you everything I need to fix. And that's why playtesters are great. And especially people that aren't you. The other thing that the other reason you want to test with people that aren't you is that you're going to get really good at your own game. If anybody's ever seen the original Tron, that's like a plot point in the original Tron where Jeff Bridges is hustling people in the arcade he owns at the beginning, because the arcade is filled with games that he programmed. So he's just like tricking everybody into thinking like, oh, you can't beat this. And then he gets the high score and amazes everybody. That's true. And because what you're going to do is you're going to be like, oh, this needs to be harder. This needs to be harder. This needs to be harder. Then you hand it to somebody at a convention, and then everybody hates your game because it's too hard. So testers are really important. When you do the test, you sit there with a notebook and you jot down notes, and do it with a notebook. Like, don't do it with your phone. Phones are bad. I don't have my notebook with me, so I'm pantomiming wrong. But imagine this is not a notebook and is instead not a phone, it is instead a notebook. But take notes, be like, where did they get lost? Where did they, where were bugs? Things like that. Or even prep a questionnaire for them. And, you can take those materials and sit down later and evaluate the test. And that helps you decide, so for the next go around, here are the things I need to fix. And then you start again. So that's iteration. And iteration happens over many phases. The first iterations are going to be quick and dirty prototypes, and it's even just deciding what the project should be, and that starts in the center here. Over to proof of concept and, figuring out like the requirements of the system and building your first build, and then you kind of go to second build every time evaluating and testing. Eventually you go around this loop. It changes how many times you actually need to do this based on how big the project is. But eventually you look at it and you're like, huh, you don't suck. And then you can release it. Maybe. Or maybe you release it while it sucks, and that's how you get playtesters. It's just actually really good for that. Just like pop a build up and be like, this is a development build, please give feedback. And, you know, you can get playtesters through that. But testing and iteration helps make your games better. So again, you conceptualize, identify. That includes concept art, early prototypes, things like that, design, implement. Let's really get those early prototypes working and in order to present to people. Again, they don't have to be nice. They can be ugly. You know, that's, you know, here's like some cards from my card game that don't have art. They just had the text. And these are actually more farther along prototype cards because they at least have graphic design. At one point, they didn't even have any graphic design. They just said helmet, right? In pencil. So helmet +4, you know, things like that on an index card. So, you know, quick, dirty, able to be played right away. Because what we care about is the mechanics right away and not necessarily like putting art on those mechanics. So somebody says beta releases, even before that, alpha releases, prototype releases. Alpha is when it's really, yeah. Also, don't be fooled by like AAA games that are like, it's in beta and it's done. You can define what alpha and beta means. And for most people, alpha means like when it's put together with bubblegum and duct tape. But yeah, earliest possible version. And then you test. You put it in front of people and you test. Play test all the time. No, really, with strangers. Anybody who isn't working on the game, take notes. And when you evaluate tests, you want to look at trends in feedback and not just individual, like, you know, you're going to get a lot of, oh, you're working on a game, it's so cool. You know what'd be awesome is if you put Naruto in this and he could fight Goku and Garfield. Can you do that? You promise? No, you can't do it because copyright infringement. Also, like, you're going to get a lot of one-offs. And, you know, you want to respond to like, oh, I guess, you know, they need to be able to shove the zombies away when they get mobbed because it happens too often. You know, somebody says I'm reminded of Fallout 76's beta that went out a month before release. Yeah. And I try not to dunk on commercial games unless it's Final Fantasy 13 because I don't like that game. It's just bad. The design is so good and so bad in different weird places. But I try not to dunk on games, but, you know, yeah, like you can tell when a project is mismanaged. You know, like Cyberpunk, you know, there's a lot of bad things that are coming out about like working conditions for Cyberpunk. And I don't blame the devs. I think the devs were pushed in a direction that shouldn't have happened. So yeah, you evaluate and then you like look at what you need to do for the next one. And then real quick, I know we're like at time, but development structures, waterfall. We are avoiding waterfall. So these are actually like names of development styles in the industry. Waterfall is a software development process where it's just like beginning to end. You figure out what the requirements are, you design it, you make it, you test it, and it goes out the door. A lot of games have been made like this. And the problems, the benefits are that problems are researched early. You build a foundation, and it's great if there's a lot of knowns. This is pretty good for sequels, pretty good for, you know, if you're just making a remake and you just need to kind of shove something out. But you don't iterate in this. You don't, like, normally you would do this process many times because you're like always testing. This is where you get a bad game that you don't find out is bad until it's done because you didn't test until the end. So waterfall, we don't use it. And all these are available online, the lecture slides, so you can look at this and be like, what is that waterfall thing again? Agile is another one, and here's the Agile Manifesto. You don't need to read it. I just wanted you to know that there was a manifesto. we actually focus on a part of Agile in our class, which is called Scrum, and it's named after a rugby scrum, which is a like short, intense like meeting. I mean, in rugby, it's like where you all pile on the ball, but it's not scum, har har, joke from old game. But Scrum is basically that looping structure that I talked about turned into a design process. So the idea is that you have a backlog. It's a list of things you want to put in the software product you have. And think of it as like a bunch of features you have on a shelf. You take, like imagine your Christmas list, but your Christmas list is a series of objects you put on the shelf. So like you say, oh, I'm going to focus on this item on my wish list right now. And you take it off the shelf and you look at it and your team gets together and you talk about it and you say, okay, it needs this, 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 and this. Then you each say, you make this, you make this, you make this. You go off into your corners and you say, we're going to meet tomorrow. So come back with something. So you work. That's called a sprint. And then you come back at the appointed meeting time and you say, here's what I have. You put it together and you test it. You see how the test turns out, and then you try it again. And you say, okay, we need to go have another sprint for 2 weeks, and we'll come back with our stuff that we fixed from the last test. Work. And then you come back, test, iterate. But if it's good, then you review what went right, what went wrong, you implement the thing. We use Scrum in this class because every week of class is every first day of the week. Our first day of the week is our lecture day. That's where we're meeting and talking. But our second day is ideally like your set aside work time. So like we don't have lecture. I just kind of am on Discord and you can bug me or not bug me. You can have me bug you or not bug you. That's what I meant to say. Sorry. The point being like I'm around to be asked questions of in that time by you. So you can you can ask me stuff during that time, but it's for you to have time set aside to work. So that can be your meeting time. And every week you'll come in and be like, all right, here's the game. Hey, everybody, go to my itch page and play my game. What'd you think? Work on some stuff. And then that time in between classes are your sprints. So every week it's like you have a weekly Scrum meeting, basically. So that's how we're doing it. See, Scrum is that. So, and real quick, because I know we're over time. So these are some charts about data from an article on game design. Basically, it's just some stats about projects in the game industry. Basically, they say it's some data saying, okay, if you manage your project well and can get the game done faster, you're going to be better. So, this is sort of a way to say, when you're young, you're going to be tempted to work on this magnum opus. Don't do that because you're going to work on it for like 10 years. And the longer a project takes, the less chance it has of, it's tracking on the left Metacritic scores. Team size helps. Divide and conquer. That's why you work in teams in this class, because you wanna say you're the programmer and you're this and you're that. The more games you make, the better you're going to get at making games. You're going to have higher Metacritic scores with more experience. So if you make a first game and you want to make that magnum opus, it's going to probably suck because it's your first game. So don't make the magnum opus the first game. Make a Space Invader clone or something. Make a, Twine. Engine actually doesn't really matter. What tends to matter is that if you've used a tool before. So, you're going to get familiar with the tool and you're going to use it more often. That's just how it goes. Production method matters. Not really a whole lot. Using Agile, Scrum, or some other thing doesn't really matter, except, having no production method or waterfall is the least best, basically is what this says. Also, again, divide and conquer have set roles, if you can, if your team is supportive of it. That's it. I know we're very over time, so thank you for staying a few extra minutes. I'm not going to keep you any longer, but I will be on Discord if you do have any burning questions. So thank you, and looking forward to working with everybody. Bye.